continuing his legal showdown with Associated Newspapers Limited, the company behind the Daily Mail. What was expected to be a weighty, historic moment in his long-running crusade against unlawful information gathering quickly shifted into something far more complicated. Instead of a tightly focused legal testimony, the courtroom witnessed what many observers described as a carefully curated emotional display, marked by selective recollection, dramatic pauses, and statements that didn't always line up with documented reality. Throughout the session, Harry appeared visibly emotional as he spoke about the pain of seeing private moments from his life and from Meghan Markle's and exposed to the public. His voice wavered. His eyes filled. There were long pauses, heavy sighs, and moments that felt deliberately charged. But while the emotion was unmistakable, critics quickly pointed out a glaring problem. Much of what Harry discussed had little relevance to the actual case. This lawsuit centers on alleged actions from 15 to 20 years ago. And yet Meghan's name kept resurfacing, repeatedly. So the question lingered in the courtroom and beyond. Why was she being brought into a case rooted in events from a very different chapter of Harry's life? The tension escalated when A&L's lawyer, Anthony White KC, introduced a Facebook account under the name Mr. Mischief. According to the defense, this account had been used to communicate with Mail on Sunday journalist Charlotte Griffiths, someone said to move within Harry's broader social orbit. The messages, White suggested, were friendly in tone and even involved the exchange of phone numbers. Harry's response was immediate and absolute. He denied ever using the name Mr. Mischief. He claimed no recollection of sending messages to Griffiths. No memory, no awareness. No confirmation, nothing. When pressed further, specifically on the idea that information might have been coming from people within his own circles, Harry shut that down just as firmly. His social world, he insisted, was not leaky. There were no insiders feeding stories. No betrayals. No loose lips. Just private information somehow surfacing on its own. As the hearing continued, Harry leaned heavily on themes that have become familiar to the public over the years. The loss of his mother, feeling unsupported by his family, his wife's suffering, the press as the root cause of his pain. He appeared tired, reportedly sleep-deprived, possibly rattled by being called to testify earlier than expected. At times, his frustration spilled over. He challenged the judge directly, more than once, a move that struck many observers as unusual and risky. To critics watching closely, it didn't project confidence. It looked more like strain. Behind the emotional outbursts, some sensed something deeper: fear. Fear of losing the case. Fear of reputational damage. Fear of how this outcome might affect his marriage, his finances, or his other ongoing legal battles. Under pressure, Harry didn't anchor himself in hard facts. He leaned further into emotion. At the core of his case is the claim that humiliating stories and photos were obtained illegally, that his privacy was violated, and that none of it originated from people close to him. But that argument runs into a major obstacle. Many of Harry's most infamous moments happened in full public view. Wild nights out, reckless behavior, public drunkenness, the Vegas photos, the inappropriate jokes, none of those required hacking or secret surveillance. They required presence, participation, choices, and while information being leaked doesn't erase wrongdoing, it also doesn't mean the events never occurred. Increasingly, critics argue this trial feels less like a search for justice and more like a calculated public relations effort. Harry understands media narratives better than most. He's used interviews, documentaries, and books to challenge family members, settle scores, and reshape public perception. He knows how powerful storytelling can be. That's why Princess Diana is invoked. That's why Meghan remains central. That's why the institution is framed as the villain. Every emotional lever is pulled, not necessarily to reform journalism, but to repair an image. British journalists covering the trial weren't convinced. Tom Peck of The Times noted that Harry repeatedly sidestepped direct questions, dismissed evidence as disgusting, and argued instead of answering. At one point, the judge had to remind him that witnesses are there to respond, not debate. Peck also highlighted the dramatic pacing of Harry's testimony. The pauses, the prolonged stares, the carefully timed emotion, particularly near the end, where such moments are often rehearsed for maximum impact. In the end, Harry spoke at length about nearly everything except what mattered most in court. Clear, verifiable proof. He blamed the press for his drinking, his relationships, his missteps, his unhappiness, even the strain on his marriage. Responsibility, once again, seemed to belong anywhere but with him. He insists he doesn't want his life turned into a commercial product, while simultaneously starring in high-profile documentaries, publishing best-selling memoirs, and sharing curated moments across global platforms. The contradictions are impossible to ignore. And as the case continues, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. This courtroom battle isn't just about the past. It's about control, of narrative, of perception, and of legacy.